Hello there. You're with Ellen now, stepping into a quiet night where snow blankets even the oldest forgotten paths, and the full moon floats above like a lantern that never fades. Far away in the deep pine forests of the north, there was a small wooden cabin nestled at the edge of the ancient Galder forest, a place, some say, on certain moonlit nights, the wind carries whispers of dreams that lost their way. In that cabin lived two people, an old woman, her hair the color of morning frost, and her granddaughter, a small girl named Astrid. On every full moon, the grandmother would lead the child outside, lift her chin toward the stars, and whisper something in a language so old only the wind and the light could remember. Every moonbeam, she would say, is a doorway to something soft the world forgot. Astrid didn't understand all of it back then, but she always listened. There were nights when the two would sit in complete silence, letting the moonlight fall on their joined hands, as if a fine silver thread connected them to the heavens. Then, one winter, when the snow fell heavy as feathers, her grandmother didn't wake. There was no crying, no visitors, only Astrid, under the same roof of timber and moss, stepping out into the moonlight alone, as if her grandmother were still there, just lighter now, quieter, more like breath than voice. Tonight, Ellen will tell you a story that begins in that stillness, about a girl who grew up with the moon, planted a strange seed, and one day followed it skyward to become part of a gentleness that never fades. So close your eyes now. Take a deep breath and let Ellen lead you into this tale under the silent light of the moon. It was Astrid's first winter alone. The snow fell thick and slow, like the world was trying to hide something. The sky stayed gray most days, except when the moon came out. Then, the entire landscape lit up in cold silver. Every branch, every drift outlined in quiet clarity. Astrid, with no hand to hold, still stepped outside on every full moon, standing exactly where her grandmother used to pause, her face tilted upward, silent. One such night, so still she could hear the snow landing, she opened the old wooden box her grandmother had left behind. Inside, nestled in faded linen, was a tiny silver seed, no larger than her pinky nail, and cold as the first frost of winter. There was a note, written in her grandmother's unsteady hand. Plant it under moonlight, then wait. Astrid didn't ask why. There was no one left to ask. But deep inside, she knew. This was more than a message. It was a promise, or maybe a key to something her grandmother could no longer explain. She took the seed outside and knelt in the snow beside the small pile of stones that marked a patch of earth from where her grandmother once sat. Under the moon's soft gaze, she dug a small hollow with her bare hands, pressed the seed into the frozen ground, and covered it again, like tucking in something fragile to sleep. She sat beside it until nearly dawn. No tears, no dreams, just stillness. And as the moon slipped behind the mountains, she whispered, "I'll wait." A year had passed since Astrid planted the silver seed beneath the snow. Through all 4 seasons, she had returned to that same small spot in the clearing every full moon, never missing one, not even in the cutting wind of winter or the wet hush of spring, not in the golden haze of summer, nor the crackling cold of fall. But the seed remained still. No shoot, no crack in the soil, no sign of green, only a small dip in the snow, an indentation that never quite filled, as though the earth remembered it too and was keeping a place for something not yet ready to wake. Though she was still a child, Astrid understood something most grown people forget. Waiting doesn't mean wishing for magic to arrive immediately. It means staying close, so that when it does come, it isn't alone. On the first full moon of the 2nd year, she decided to do something she'd never done before. A ceremony. Not to call the seed forth, but to remind it she was still there. Not a ritual to summon change, but a way to hold the thread between what was gone and what might still return. She pulled out the white silk robe her grandmother had sewn for her. It was too long, the sleeves brushing past her fingertips, and the hem dragged in the snow. But when she put it on, it felt like warmth wrapped around memory. She took the small silver lantern her grandmother had once used during her own quiet rituals, dusted it off, and tucked a single white candle inside. Then she walked into the clearing, the snow crunching faintly beneath her bare feet. The moonlight poured down like milk. She moved slowly, reverently, and arranged a circle of small stones around the hollow in the snow where the seed lay sleeping. Each stone held a story, one found by the stream where she and her grandmother had once sung songs to the wind. Another chipped from the rock where they'd sat and shared black bread and apples. The tiniest one was the one her grandmother had slipped into her pocket during a fever, saying, "It will keep your dreams warm." With the circle set, she lit the candle. The flame didn't flicker much. It just burned, calm and small, like it understood where it was. Astrid knelt beside the lantern. She didn't cry. She didn't speak loudly. But she talked. She told the seed and the moon about how the trees sometimes creaked in ways that reminded her of the old rocking chair, about how the scarf still smelled faintly of pine, about the dreams where she heard knocking, soft and steady. But the door never opened. She didn't expect answers. She didn't even expect to be heard. But she believed in the telling, in the way the words carried weight, even if they vanished into cold air. And the moon listened, not with a voice, not with a sign, but with presence. Its light rested gently on the snow, and the shadows softened around her. Time passed. The snow thickened. Her back chilled. Her knees went numb. But she remained. And when the moon was at its highest, huge and quiet and silver shore, Astrid tilted her head slightly, closed her eyes, and whispered, "If you're listening, I'm still waiting." Winter passed, and the snow slowly began to surrender to the first timid breaths of spring. Small patches of earth began to show through the white, just enough to remind the world that life still stirred underneath. Every full moon, Astrid returned to the spot where she had planted the seed. She would sit in silence by the shallow dip in the snow, as if her presence alone could remind the buried seed it had not been forgotten. The first year passed, and nothing changed. The second, too, came and went in silence. Still, she came. Still, she waited. Astrid grew quietly, like a snowflake that never melted. Her presence was light but steady. Her eyes grew deeper, her voice less frequent. She didn't need many words anymore. The things she once said, she had already whispered to the moon. Then, in the third spring, on a night when the wind no longer bit and the stars blinked a little closer than usual, she saw it. A silver sprout, barely a breath tall, had emerged from the dip in the snow. It was fragile, its stem thin and trembling, but unmistakably alive. She didn't cry out, didn't run to touch it. She simply sat where she was, hands folded in her lap, and watched with eyes that seemed to have waited for this moment across lifetimes. The sapling looked like nothing from this world. It emitted a pale glow, not bright, not flickering, more like the soft exhale of a tiny, sleeping star. From that night forward, Astrid visited the sprout nightly. She told it stories, not grand tales, but small things. The way the wind moved that day, the fox that passed at dusk, the shape the clouds made. The tree never replied, but its leaves quivered gently when she drew near, as if listening. Astrid aged, and so did the tree. Not in haste, not in competition with the seasons. They grew together, slowly, as if the time around them had thickened, deepened, and quieted. Spring came. Winter returned. And yet, always at that spot, there were two, one girl, one tree, and a promise unspoken but eternal. By the 16th year since the seed was sown, the tree had grown tall enough to touch the eaves of the wooden cabin. Astrid, now a young woman with a slender frame and eyes that held more years than her face, spent her evenings beside it, sometimes sketching, sometimes scribbling quiet lines of verse in a notebook she never read aloud. The tree was no longer a sapling. Its bark gleamed with the faint sheen of aged silver, and its branches spread in gentle, layered arcs, like the ribs of a vaulted sky. Each leaf shimmered softly, not bright, but steady, casting light the way the moon spills it, in silence, in stillness, without ever going out. Even when clouds veiled the sky, even when the moon was absent, the tree glowed. The villagers began to notice. Some claimed they saw strange light from the forest's edge. Others dreamt of glowing trees. They never came close, but they whispered, "The moonlit girl." No one dared speak it too loud. Astrid knew, but she didn't hide. She remained, living quietly in her small world with the tree, with the light. Each night, that light didn't just touch the snow. It seemed to settle into hearts. Those who dared approach, even for a moment, found their breaths slowed, their hearts softened. No one knew where the light came from. No one understood why it never faded. But Astrid did. It was the answer to a promise, a gift not summoned by magic, but by presence, by listening, by loving something enough to stay. In the 17th year since the silver seed was planted, when Astrid had long grown into a quiet young woman, living in the constant glow of the olive tree, winter returned with an unusual stillness. The snow came, soft and unhurried. The wind whispered through the trees, but it carried no chill. Instead, it held something else, a kind of waiting, as though the forest itself had paused, listening for something distant and vast approaching through the cold. Astrid was no longer the child who once clutched a lantern beneath the stars. She now lived with the tree as one lives with breath. Their connection was no longer something she needed to seek. It simply was. She no longer spoke to it, nor it to her. Yet something passed between them each night as she sat beneath its silver branches. That winter, Astrid began to dream, not of memories, not of the past. These dreams came from elsewhere. In them, she stood in a pale forest where trees grew not from soil, but from light. Her steps made no sound, yet with each movement, a quiet bell seemed to ring, not in the air, but somewhere deep inside her. Each tone was familiar, though she could not name it. she saw her grandmother, no longer old and frail, but young and luminous, sitting beside a great tree whose light flowed upward like water. The woman did not turn to greet her, but Astrid knew. She was waiting. When she woke, her heartbeat felt slower, deeper, as though her body still lingered in that other place, not fully returned. The next night, she walked out into the snow, wearing her white silk robe. The tree stood tall and radiant, casting a light that touched the falling snow without melting it. Around its base, the snow had receded in a perfect, soft ring, as if the earth itself had exhaled. Astrid stood for a long time in silence. She did not touch the tree. She didn't move. Then, slowly, she looked upward. The moon hung enormous above the treetops, closer than she had ever seen it. Not a distant lantern, but a presence, watching, knowing. And in that quiet, she felt it. The moon was looking back. In the 18th year since the seed had touched the earth, the wind changed its voice. The northern wind had once been a familiar murmur, slipping through pine branches, brushing past the wooden cabin, carrying the scent of sap and new snow. But that winter, the wind became something else. It roared, not with cold, but with purpose, as though it came not from mountain or sea, but from the rim of a forgotten world. Astrid was sitting beside the tree when the first of these winds arrived. Her cloak lifted, her hair tangled into ribbons in the air, yet she did not flinch. She felt no chill. She simply lifted her gaze toward the unseen source, and in the rush of air, she felt it clearly. It was calling her. The tree responded. Its leaves didn't bend with the gale. They shimmered with a rhythm all their own, like whispers rising from deep within the wood. The trunk let out a sound, soft and low, like a bowstring drawn beneath the moon, or the breath of something ancient waking at last. Around the base, the snow began to melt in slow spirals, revealing soil marked in patterns that felt more dream than design. Astrid walked the spiral, her feet gentle as if stepping over a sleeping incantation. The wind did not push her back. It carried her, lifted her. She asked nothing of the tree, nothing of the wind, but deep inside, she knew. The world she knew was no longer the only place she belonged. That winter's full moon was the largest Astrid had ever seen. It didn't just shine, it breathed, hovering above like a great eye slowly opening, gazing down upon all that lay buried in snow and memory. Its light no longer drifted like mist. It fell in columns, broad and deep, like silver stairways stretching from sky to soil. The olive tree welcomed the beams with its whole being. Each leaf grew brighter, reflecting not just the present, but echoes of time itself. Her grandmother smiling by the hearth, a younger Astrid asleep among old books, winters that had passed without a word. Astrid stood beneath the canopy, her eyes closed. She heard no voice, yet every part of her body felt it. The moon was calling her home. She did not move. She did not speak, but she opened her arms, not in surrender, but in invitation. This was not departure. This was return to a place where light had no need of reason, and love required no language. And the moon, as if understanding perfectly, sent down one pure beam, straight, silent, and waiting. On the final full moon night of her 20th winter, it happened. Quietly, without warning. No thunder cracked. No voice echoed from above. Only stillness, deeper than any before, as though the world itself had paused to listen. The olive tree, after 20 years of slow growth beneath the snow, began to tremble, not violently, but gently, like ripples on a still pond. Its leaves blazed with silver light, its roots lifted from the ground, glowing like strands of mist unraveling into the air. Astrid stood beside it, her hand resting lightly on the trunk. The wind was no longer cold. It was warm, like breath. Her cloak floated around her, weightless in the shifting air, but she remained still. She had waited for this moment so long that she no longer wondered what might come after. The roots dissolved. The soil turned to luminous dust. The tree did not leap. It rose, slowly, steadily, as though lifted by moonlight itself. Astrid took one step forward, then no more, for the earth was already falling away beneath her. She was not afraid. She did not think. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the glowing bark, and the tree, sensing her readiness, embraced her in silence, and together they rose, ascending the column of silver light that led directly into the eternal moon. From the village below, a beam of light soared into the sky. The people did not understand, but perhaps they would remember. There was no sensation of falling, no sensation of flight. One moment, Astrid had been surrounded by snow, and the next, she stood on a floor of pale silver stone, beneath a sky made of moonlight and silence. Before her stretched a city without borders. Towers of crystal rose into infinity. Stairways of suspended silver light connected floating terraces like bridges between stars. Across the horizon, Hundreds of glowing trees stood on drifting aisles of stone, each one humming with a resonance she felt more than heard. No voices, no people. And yet, the space was warm, as if the place itself had been waiting. The olive tree descended into a wide, circular plaza. Its roots, upon touching the ground, dissolved, effortlessly, instantly, as though they had returned home after a very long dream. Astrid stepped forward, barefoot, across glowing steps that shimmered with each touch. She did not call out. She didn't need to. The silence spoke. "We have been waiting." She understood. The tree had never truly belonged to the world below. And now, neither did she. Astrid stepped through the corridor of light, like someone waking gently from a long and tender dream. The moon city before her did not open with grand towers or blazing halls. It welcomed her with presence. Every archway, every silver stair seemed to recognize her, not with memory, but with intuition, as if they had always known she would come. There was no sound, no wind, only the faint resonance of light brushing against light, pure, wordless, and deep. She moved slowly along a pathway that curved out into an open plaza. At its center stood the olive tree, now fully rooted in the moon's silver stone. It glowed steadily, not brightly, but deeply, pulsing like a heart that had never stopped. She saw no people, but she felt them, or what remained. The floating stairs, the suspended lanterns, they swayed ever so slightly, as if someone had just walked by, or still stood there, unseen. Astrid turned into a garden without flowers. Instead, silver light flowed over white stone like a gentle river. There, among the drifting light, she saw figures, faint, still, like dreams that hadn't yet finished forming. One stood closer than the others, slender, long-haired, tilted slightly, as though listening. Astrid reached out. Her fingers didn't touch skin. They passed through a fine layer of memory, warm and flickering. The figure unraveled like a thread of starlight, dissolving softly into the air. She understood. These were the ones who came before, called by the moon, welcomed. And when they were ready, they didn't disappear. They simply became light. She didn't ask questions, didn't search for meaning. Her steps continued, quiet and sure, as if the moon itself guided her feet. And within her, there were no more questions, only the quiet knowing. She had arrived in a place no longer shaped by time, but by presence. Astrid stepped into a space with no name. There was no door, no entrance. One moment, she had been walking beneath the moon, and the next, she stood within a chamber, quiet as breath, where light flowed like water and the walls shimmered with memories never fully recalled. At the center stood the olive tree, now towering above everything. Its roots sank into the moon's stone, as if they had once belonged here. Each leaf glowed softly, and within their glow, memories floated like mist. She saw her grandmother seated beside the hearth, that gentle, tilted smile. She saw herself as a child, bare feet in snow, hands full of frost. She saw the moment she planted the seed, the first time she whispered to the moon. But then came visions she had never known. Silver forests where moonlight touched the ground. Walkers of light who passed silently and were never seen again. Spirits who guarded these woods and skies, caretakers of all that mankind had quietly abandoned. She understood. A seed of moonlight only blossoms when touched by memory unclouded. And her grandmother had been the last bearer of that memory, passing it on not with words, but with love. Astrid placed her hand on the trunk. No words were spoken. She was part of the memory now. And the light was a voice that never needed to speak. Astrid never left the moon, nor did she vanish. She simply became stiller, quieter, like the final pause in a lullaby. People did not see her go, but in every full moon, if one looks long enough, they'll see a faint tree, and beneath it, the outline of a girl sitting quietly, as if humming to the stars. No one knows her name. No one remembers where the tree came from. But on certain nights, especially when someone feels sorrow without knowing why, they look up and feel a little lighter. Astrid is the tree keeper, not to guard, but to be. She does not speak. She does not act. She simply sits, where the light falls over her like flowing water. Wind no longer moves. Time no longer ticks. There is only the soft breath of a world dreaming. The tree continues to shine, not to be seen, but to be remembered by those who still feel. Some gentle things are never lost. They simply grow quiet, waiting to be found. And so she remains, Astrid, like a song without words, like sleep without end.